Good morning to everyone except for those that have blue hair and their name is Rory Lobb. You can go and get player ratings for the Pies and Footscray game from last night. We're going to get straight into it. For those who don't know what this is, it sort of reads in the title. We're going to rate Collingwood's players' performances out of 10, and let's get straight into it. So, an interesting one to get the ball rolling. Dan McStay had a negative player rating last night, negative 2.9, according to Champion Data. He had 14 touches and he competed well in the air. There were times where maybe he could have clunked the mark that he had an opportunity to. Had that indecisive moment in the fourth quarter. It was no game like Port Adelaide for Dan McStay, but the effort was there. He put himself in positions to have a really strong impact on the game. Unfortunately for him, he was indecisive at times. Did he end up taking any contested marks? He had one contested mark. He had 4 shots on goal for 1 goal 3. So while this was a negative player rating game for Dan McStay, this game could have very easily been another 9, 8 out of 10 for Dan McStay. But for the reasons being that he was inaccurate and indecisive, I'm just going to give Dan McStay a 6. I can't give him anything less than that because I just think that he was this close from having that kind of game. But unfortunately, he was a little bit below that. The obvious one that we won't do a rating for, by the way, is Reef McInnes. Unfortunately, the ACL, which is heartbreaking, but we'll save that for the review and talk about that there. The next player I want to talk about is Jordan De Goey, and another player who, similar to McStay, had opportunities where he didn't have easier opportunities like De Goey last night, but there were chances for De Goey to ice the game, and there was that relatively easy set shot right in front. I think it may have been 35, 40 meters out, and could have iced it. McStay had a similar opportunity to put us 21 points up. But I think we'd all be comfortable admitting that all we wanted from De Goey last night was really just to get through the game unscathed, get good minutes in, see a few centre bounces, and have an impact forward. He ended up playing, what was his midfield time? He spent 1/4 of the game in the midfield in its entirety. So he didn't spend 1/4, like he didn't spend the first, second, or third, or fourth. It was spread throughout, but it accumulated for a quarter's worth of midfield time. So 25-75 split. Look, the rating will be probably giving Jordan De Goey another 6 as well, to be fair. But these 6s could easily be 8. So that's the silver lining in these lowish ratings. Ned Long, a little bit disappointed to see him as a sub, but once again, when the lads come out and play their role and do their job the way they did last night, it's going to be very hard to pick a sub every week, unfortunately. And it's going to be hard to even try have a crack in guessing who it would be. I think we thought Ned Long would be off the table in that discussion, but he wasn't. He had 13 touches running at a 50% disposal efficiency, but I don't know. It's just he's passing the eye test. Like the stats don't really say much about his game, but from what I'm able to see at the ground, 9 tackles, 28 pressure acts, breaking tackles. He literally cannot tackle the man. He's killing people in tackles and stopping them from transitioning the ball. I'm going to give relative to his standard, Ned Long, I'm going to give Ned Long a 7 out of 10. Mason Cox was definitely a little bit slow to get into the game, had a few moments where he was poor, but I think that second half spoke to why he's still an important piece to the team. Now, how we utilize him throughout the season, if fully healthy, I don't know. It's going to be very tricky. That through ball to Bobby Hill from a guy that stands at 6'11", who's only played the game for 10 years, if that. The aerial contest as well. I don't know. It's going to be hard. It's a good problem to have. I'm going to give Cox, relative to his role, I'll give him a 6.5. Does a 6.5 ultimately keep you in the team when Mihocek is waiting in the ranks? Probably not. So there's my answer there. Patrick Lipinski, 22 touches, 9 score involvements. I thought he was huge. Now, you don't see, being at the game and versus being at home, you don't see everything that Patrick Lipinski does off camera. He was the leading runner for the game. He had over 15 kilometres ran and had a lot of really good moments in handball chains, and then had some good kicks going inside 50. Two-thirds of his disposals were not kicks, but those handballs weren't just nothing hand passes. They were really good link-up chain hand passes to move the ball forward. I'm going to give Patrick Lipinski a 7.5 out of 10. To have nearly 50% of possessions result in a score involvement is elite. Absolutely elite. We've got Dan Houston next. He had 15 touches, obviously quieter than last week and didn't have the same impact. I thought he had some really good defensive moments, spoiling the ball, took an intercept mark, had that goal. We got the goal that we were hoping for, not robbed this time around. Yeah, 1 shot, 1 goal. How many score involvements? 4 score involvements, which is right on par with the best halfbackers in the league. I'd probably just give Dan Houston a measly 6.5. I think that's fair. For his standard, if we're going to go by how he performed last week, I think a 6.5 is fair, no? You could argue a 7. Let me know in the comment section. Moving on, we have Jamie Elliott. Had 14 touches. I thought he was quite a big presence in the forward line. He definitely was our target man a lot of the time going into the forward 50. He had 0 contested marks, but what I'll say about that is he just maybe he's too quick for his defenders. Like they weren't marks where there was no one within his vicinity. He just, because he times it and marks it at the highest point, I think it makes his marks look easier than what they are. His ability to mark on lead. So while they weren't contested, I think in some way that there was still that pressure around him within that vicinity when taking those marks. But what he ended up having, 1 goal, 3, so 4 shots on goal. Could have had a big night. 15 touches and 4 goals could have been huge. Instead, it's 15 touches and 1 goal. The beauty of these situations is the fact that we see a game where it was frustrating to watch, but there are a lot of players who were a bee's dick away from pretty much changing the game and putting on the cape and being the hero for the game. Bobby Hill, Geordie Goey, Dan McStay, we've spoken about so far. So those players all fit in that conversation from last night. I'm going to give Jamie a 6.5 out of 10. Moving on to Isaac Quaynor, 11 touches, 3 intercept possessions. Again, another player that doesn't really read too well on the stat sheet, but I thought just some of his moments in the last quarter to apply pressure when we thought the doggies were out in transition, they were big moments. And I'm starting to see that more and more and appreciate that more and more being at the games watching Isaac Quaynor. Would you like him to have more of an impact on the stat sheet? Maybe, I guess so. Especially if he's going to be a part of our future, being in that young group. It's a tricky one, but I'll still give Isaac Quaynor a 6.5 just because of those intangibles that you don't see. A lot of 6.5s and a lot of 6s. Brody and Maynard, 13 touches. Anything screaming out there? 2 contested marks. I think he's having a great start to the year, and I think it's because it's a contract year, and he's obviously he wants to bolster his leverage in the negotiations that he will inevitably have to be a part of at some point regarding his free agency at the end of this year. He was great last week. He was great again this week. I'm going to give Bruzzy a 7 out of 10. I loved watching the game that he had last night. He just impacts in so many different ways. Bobby Hill is one who was missing for the most part of the game, but it's all about moments. Like the classic cliche phrase is, it might not be your game, but it just might be your moment. And he had 2 big moments in the game and took his chances. He kicked 2 goals, had 3 shots, and you just like Bobby Hill owning the moment and just taking the shot upon himself and taking full responsibility for whatever the outcome is. So that's what you want to see from Bobby Hill. Probably handed it off a little bit too much last year. I think this year that's changing for the betterment of the team and himself, of course. So I'm going to give Bobby, just for his ability to impact the game despite not being in the game at times, I'll give him a 7 out of 10. The first of the 2 Daicoses in Josh, 25 touches. Anything else screaming out to me here? Let's see. How many score involvements? 5 score involvements, which is again elite for a half-back flanker. I think he was very clean. This is definitely his best game this year. He was better than last week. He was much better than the GWS game. His decisions were sound. He was running at an 84% disposal efficiency, 438 metres gained. I think I'm going to give Josh Daicos I think he's got more in the tank, but I'll give him a 7.5 out of 10. That's what I reckon we'll do there. 7.5 out of 10 for Josh Daicos. Jack Crisp had 21 disposals, 11 contested possessions, and was elite around the ground post-clearance in the contested possession realm. 2 contested marks as well for Jack Crisp in really critical moments. I think Collingwood did really well going long down the line at times, just to compete. There were moments where players took contested marks like your McStays and Mason Cox. And then you had Jack Crisp and Brody Maynard chipping in. I go, God, we didn't have this last year, and it's nice to have that option. I think we had a good balance of that last night. So I think Crispy, we'll give old mate Crispy a 7 out of 10. Darcy Moore, 15 touches, 12 intercept possessions, which is a massive return, 3 intercept marks. And look, to be fair, he had a lot of good moments last night. He had some moments where he was well beaten by Sam Darcy, but there's not a world where I don't see Sam Darcy winning more contests than not against the premier defenders in the league. Darcy Moore's had to endure that much quicker than the other defenders, but when the Doggies come up against Carlton next week, when the Doggies come up against GWS or whoever it may be, these teams are going to find out that we're literally facing a unicorn who can run like he's a small forward and can leap like he's 7'5", and that's what he's doing. So to pair that in with his ability to time his leading patterns, like the way he meets the ball inside 50 on a lead, like Darcy Moore's 6'6", and if you watch some of the replays in those marking contests, Darcy Moore's nowhere near it, and he's right on his tail as well, by the way. So I'm going to give Darcy Moore, I was really, really happy with this game. I'm going to give Darcy Moore, I think he deserves a 7.5 out of 10. I truly believe that. And we're going to go on to another man who I think we're all so happy to see some consistency in his game with the ball. His game is built on pressure, and I'm talking about Lachie Schultz. 17 touches, 7 contested possessions, 3 shots on goal, 2 goals won, 6 score involvements, 7 tackles, 18 pressure acts. What more can you ask for? This is the first round pick. This is why we're willing to give up that first round pick, to see this on a consistent basis. The baseline is the pressure. The cherry on top is the type of game he's able to have last night and the week before. That is what we need from Lachie Schultz if we want to be a top 4 side. That's just the blunt truth. That's as real as it gets. And I think this standard he has had over the last couple of weeks needs to be upheld. Simple as that. You know, you can't just be okay. You need to be like what you were last night and the week before. That's how I feel about it. I'm going to give Lachie Schultz an 8.5. That was an amazing game. It was, for me, that was Lachie Schultz's best game in the black and white. And he seems like playing against the Doggies, because I'm pretty sure he had a pretty good game against the Doggies last year as well. Next up, Nicky Whisper Daicos, 39 touches, 14 contested possessions, so a large portion, I mean, 39 touches, you're going to get a bit of both on the inside and the out. But 92% midfield time, don't think there's any issues with his fitness. If we're being brutally honest, that is such a non-issue. 9 clearances, 11 score involvements. Like, these numbers are 4 tackles. Come on. He's so much better on the outside as well when he's able to be that link up. And I love it. I love Nick Daicos on the outside. I like him on the inside. You just can't lose with that man, wherever he is. And and you know what? While I give Nick Daicos an 8 out of 10, I want to tie this conversation into the next. I'll give Nick Daicos an 8.5 out of 10. Sorry. He makes Scott Pendlebury look faster, who is the next man we're going to talk about. Because when Pendlebury gets the ball, Pendles has 3 options. He'll dispose of it immediately. He might sell Candy. He might sell to 2 or 3 players. Or he knows he's got Nick Daicos by his side. So if he doesn't have those first 2 initial options, and Nick Daicos, a handball received to Nick Daicos is the best option, he'll look for that. And I think that's a big part of being able to help Pendles with his lack of speed in the game. Nick Daicos is never too far away, ready to take the ball from him and run and carry. So it alleviates the burden of having Scott Pendlebury when he's slower than most midfielders these days. But man, geez, didn't he have some moments in that fourth quarter? 26 touches. What else are we seeing from Pendles? Through 50% midfield time. So I wonder what his time on ground was. Let's have a look. He had 11 score involvements, which is unbelievable. What was his time on ground? 77% time on ground. I don't mind that. That's fine for me. I wonder, did he start in the back line? Or did he rotate through the back line or through the forward? I can't quite remember, to be brutally honest. But I think that's a throwback Pendles game, and I'm going to give him an 8 out of 10. I can't see myself giving him any less. Darcy Cameron, 19 touches, 13 contested possessions. He was just everywhere. 2 intercept marks, 2 contested marks. Yeah. I think, once again, Tim English had some really good moments. So did Darcy Cameron. Both in the last quarter as well, but mind you, they were sort of playing their own game at times. Yeah, really good game. I can't see myself not giving DC at least an 8 out of 10. If I'm being honest, 13 contested possessions, 19 touches. What more do you want for someone who we got for pick 65 from Sydney? Can't complain. Bo McCreery, 10 touches and a goal. A few centre bounce appearances, which was nice. 4 tackles, 20 pressure acts. I thought he was good. Thought he was okay. You take a 10-1 game from McCreery, plus the pressure that he's able to apply. You take that. I think you can take that every week if he's kicking a goal a game as well. I'm going to give Bo McCreery a 7 out of 10 for that. And then 2 of my favourite players, of course, from the game, and the obvious one is still Sidebottom. He had 22 touches, 12 of those coming in the last quarter, 2 goals, one of them being the match winner. You just know when the ball hits the deck in the forward line and you see Sidey within that area, picking it up, looking for a snap, you close your eyes half a second, open your eyes again, he's already on his way celebrating that big rusty smile with his hands out to the side. Like, that's just vintage still Sidebottom. And what a revelation it's been to see Sidey in the midfield and have the bloody fourth quarter he had in his milestone game shared with Scott Pendlebury. Like, just defying odds. Defying the narrative that the mainstream media are putting out there about our old list. If we were old and too slow and whatnot, then we wouldn't have won last night against a really fast Bulldog side. And the experience got us over the line. But by far and away, my most favourite player from last night was Jeremy Howe. Barring that kick into the middle to Sidey, I think it was sort of they were both at fault slightly. I think the ball was maybe overkicked a little bit, but also I think Sidey needed to commit to that more. But besides that, I thought Howe was invincible. The way he was able to support Darcy more, particularly in that second half, just standing up strong, you just knew he had hands like a vice the whole night. 4 intercept marks, one of them being contested. 2 score launches, 2 score involvements. He spoils. You just can't complain when he either rebounds the ball for you or he kills the ball with this spoil and puts it in a safe area away from danger. 94% disposal efficiency. This has been a really good 7-8 game stretch for Jeremy Howe going back to the end of last year. He was running hot in those last 5 games. He's continued that form, and God, I don't know how we would go without a Jeremy Howe on our side this year. And I'm just like, how are you going to replace this guy moving forward? But fortunately, we don't have to worry about that yet. I'm going to give Jeremy Howe a 10 out of 10. An SP 10 out of 10. I can't give him any less. That is, and we'll wrap up the player ratings for last night against Footscray. They can take their money for their 100-year celebration. We'll take the points. Go Pies.